BLOKUS SHUFFLE UNO Edition is a tricky tile-laying game with the additional difficulty of UNO action cards. It can be played by 2 to 4 people and a round of play lasts about 30 minutes. The basic goal is to cover the most squares on the board with your own tiles. First, each player chooses a color and takes the corresponding cards. Incidentally, the version for 4 players is explained first. The 2 and 3 player versions will follow a little later in the video. Each player shuffles their cards well and places them face down in front of them as a personal draw pile. A starting player is then chosen. The starting player and then each other player in clockwise order chooses one of their tiles and places it on the board so that it covers a corner square. This would not be allowed. But this is allowed. After all players have placed their first tile, each player sees the top 2 cards of their stack and takes them into their hand so that the other players cannot see the front of them. Starting from the stone on the corner field, each player now carries out 3 phases in a specific order. First phase, playing a card and performing its action. Of course, we will come to the actions of the individual cards later in the video. Second phase, placing a stone. For the purposes of example, I will briefly demonstrate this with the yellow stones. A stone that is placed must always be connected diagonally to one of your own stones. Direct placement is generally not permitted, unless an action card states otherwise. The position of adjacent game pieces of a different color does not play a role here. The stone only has to be able to fit into the field. Third phase, i.e. at the end of each turn, a card is drawn and the next player takes their turn. There is only one rule for placing the stones. Each stone must touch another stone of the same color, but only diagonally. But be careful, the cards bring a lot of chaos into the game. So let's start again. The player whose turn it is must first play a card. To do this, they choose one of their hand cards and place it face up next to their draw pile. This creates a discard pile. If a player has a card in their hand, they must play it and perform its action, if possible. If this is not possible, the card is simply discarded as normal. And if you no longer have any cards in your hand, you skip this phase. The discard pile is not shuffled again. Second phase, placing a stone. Each newly placed stone must touch at least one other stone, but only at the corners. Stones of different colors may be arranged next to each other in any order. If a player is unable to place a stone on the board, they must pass. And never forget, the action card they have discarded could have an effect on a number of things. In the third phase, the player draws a card from their draw pile. If all cards have already been drawn, this phase is skipped. The discard pile is not reshuffled. A game ends when none of the players can place a stone. Then each player counts the squares of their unplaced stones. This stone has 5 squares. This one here, for example, has 3. The player with the fewest squares left at the end wins. The game board naturally becomes much more crowded as the game progresses, which also makes it increasingly difficult to place a matching tile. But now let's finally get to the different action cards. If the skip card is played, the next player loses their turn. If the return card is played, the order of play is reversed. Previously, play was clockwise, but from now on, play continues counterclockwise and vice versa. With the C2 card, the player draws 2 cards. They play one of them and place the other under their draw pile. With the Joker card, the player places their next tile as if it were a color of their choice. They name the desired color and then place the tile according to the normal blockhouse bars. Once the tile is in place, it takes on its actual color again. With the edge-to-edge card, the player places their next tile so that it touches at least one of their own other tiles side by side. With the recycling card, the player takes one of their tiles from the game board and places it back in their supply. He can place this piece again during his turn or keep it for a later turn. With the repositioning card, the player removes an opponent's piece from the board and places it in a different position according to the rules, so that it is adjacent to another piece of the other player via a corner. The double move card allows a player to place another piece after placing a piece on the board. However, the second piece must touch the first via a corner. Game variants for 2 players. In a game for 2 players, one player takes the blue and red pieces, the other player the yellow and green. The starting order of play is blue, yellow, red, green. Each player then shuffles the colors of his 2 colors together and places the common draw pile face down in front of him. The pieces are placed in the same way as in a game for 4 players. The cards played do not have to match the color of the piece that the player is currently playing. Every card that refers to one's own color applies to both of their colors. And at the end of the game, the players become the weaker of their colors. If this player has 3 red and 20 blue squares left, for example, the blue squares are targeted. In a game with 3 players, the order of play is also blue, yellow, red, green. Each player chooses the pieces of one color. The pieces of the 4th color are placed alternately by one of the 3 players in each round. First player 1, next round player 2, then player 3, and so on. The cards of the 4th color should be kept face down. The pieces and cards are of course played according to the rules of the standard round.